Hey, this is the Field Podcast. My name's Joe.
Family Guy.
He doesn't.
And these guys are.
Is that a legit? That's how we're doing this? Okay.
Yeah, no, that's
I'm Zach with ZL Motorworks.
And Misha's.
I'm Misha with Ecotech.
Wow.
I can't see anything.
At some point, we're gonna get good at this.
Yeah, there's it. And this is
God,
I
this is
Graham
such a
with
fail.
Boosted performance.
So this is our first guest. So we brought on Graham. He's in town doing some tuning for us. And I guess just to kind of give you guys a little bit of background information, Graham, why don't you tell us like a little blurb about you, who you are?
Okay.
How'd you end up here?
Okay. Well, let's see. I'll try to do the condensed version here. So originally, I'm from Des Moines, Iowa. I was a IT guy, software developer, also into cars. Got interested in tuning. This is about 9 years ago now. Got my first Subaru. Started tinkering around with that, and kind of realized the importance of tuning, and just kind of kept going with it. Eventually, got pretty good at it. Had the friends wanting me to tune their cars, and then had the guys at the Subaru Club want me to tune their cars. And at some point, flash forward 5 or 6 years, and I got in contact with Misha down here at Ecotech, and he needed to, some tuning, and so we started working remotely for I don't know, 2 or 3 years, I think, to begin with. And then
maybe.
In that time span, I ended up, turning into a full-time business, which has been going for about 3 years. And it's myself and my wife, Kim. We do it together. So basically, I do the tuning. She kind of handles all the other important stuff, all the organizing, a lot of customer interaction, just kind of keeping me organized so I can do my job. So we're in Chicago now. We've been in Chicago for about 3 years now. And, since then, Ecotech got their dyno, and so now I come down here and dyno tune in person. So that's kind of how we got here.
About once a month or more than that?
We're doing about once a month right now. Yeah.
And then what's the platforms that you do?
So primarily Subarus, 90% Subarus. I do quite a few FRS, BRZs, dabble into R35 GTR, some Ford EcoBoost stuff. Anything with a standalone ECU that's a good project, I'll work on it. I've got a lot of experience with Haltech. I got experience with Motec now. I've got Motec in my own STI. AEM, Link ECU, so anything like that. Starting to do stuff with the Volkswagen platform now. My wife and I just picked up a Golf R to tinker with. So those are kind of the main platforms.
New one?
Nice.
Yeah, 2017.
Nice. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Digging it.
If it doesn't go 10s and the next.
It's not hard to go 10s. It's not a Subaru.
Oh, no. Ouch.
You know.
You know.
And it starts early.
Right.
So you have a STI with a standalone in it?
Yes. So kind of my the real brief history on Subarus. First one was an 04 WRX, and that was my move away from Hondas. I wanted something that was turbocharged and four-wheel drive. Seemed like an awesome combination, and it was. It's a great car. Started modding it. Realized the STI was kind of going to be better for the road racing and type of stuff I wanted to do. So traded in for that. Unfortunately, only had it for about 6 months, and my wife and I were hit by a drunk driver. So we went and picked up the 2011 STI that I still currently have, bought it brand new, and that car over the years evolved into a full-on time attack car. And we got it ready for the 2017 Grid Life Time Attack Street Mod Series, and actually ended up winning first place at every event and won the entire season, which was completely unexpected because it was the first time building a car like that, tuning a car at that level, and then, of course, racing it. But it was a really cool experience. So,
well, that wasn't your first time road racing, but it was your first time in something that
was the first time doing time attack.
Oh,
so I've
okay.
been on the track before. HPD kind of knew the format, kind of handle the car, but doing the time attack out there with other people was kind of a new experience for me. But so that car has evolved. At this point, that car just got a Motec ECU in it this year. So that's where that.
I gotcha.
That's where
Okay.
we are starting to develop that.
So that not street legal at all anymore?
No, definitely not. It hasn't been registered for a while, but we're going to have to end up registering it because my wife and I signed up for one lap next year with the car. So
Oh, okay.
we're going to
So
give it a shot.
I'll be one of the first. I have no idea what that is.
Okay,
So hit me with a little info because I'm
Okay.
sure I'm not the only one.
I am not the greatest person to explain one lap of America because I've never done it. I'm pretty familiar with it. I don't know the history or any of the pedigree behind it, but it's been going on for some number of years now, and the basic concept is you have to have street legal cars that fit in different classes depending on price point, engine size and displacement. So there's a number of different classes, and then of course you're just competing overall with everybody. But everybody has to drive their car on the entire route, and you meet at Tire Rack in Indiana, and you start with one set of tires, and you only get to use that set of tires for the entire event. And the event always covers 6 different racetracks, one every day.
Wow.
And you're driving from track to track with up to, I believe, 4 crew members in your car, minimum of 2. So some people will have 2 drivers that switch off. Some people will have a transit driver that just handles getting the car to the next event while the driver can rest, which is how my wife and I are going to do it. She'll transit me so I can rest and then race the next day. But
so it's like drag week for road course.
it's like drag week for road course cars. Yeah. So
I was gonna say.
this year is a pretty cool layout. I'm familiar with only one of the tracks actually, which is Road Atlanta. But it starts off in Indiana. It goes down to Memphis Motorsports Park, and then it moves over to, forget the name of the track, Eagle Rock or Eagle Park in Texas. Not familiar with that one, but looks pretty fun. Moves down to NOLA Motorsports Park in Louisiana, up to Road Atlanta, which I have run before a couple times, and then goes up to VIR, Virginia International Raceway, which I'm
Nice.
extremely excited about. That's been a bucket list track for a long time.
Yeah, that was the runoffs. Or that is the runoffs this year.
Yeah.
At VIR.
So that should be a lot of fun. And then goes up to Nelson Ledges over on the east side of Ohio, I believe, which I've heard is a really cool track, but never been. So that's those are the 6 days of racing. And then it finishes back at Tire Rack the next day.
one set of tires, huh?
One set of tires, 3,500 miles. Some of those transits are 9 hours in between to get to a hotel and get a little bit of sleep. And then the format of each track, the way that kind of works, people that are curious, you've got a morning and an afternoon session, and it's 3 laps with a standing start and cumulative time for all your laps. So, and you add together your morning session and your evening session, and however you place is you get some points for that, and you carry on.
So do you have a strategy? Like, are you going to tune down the car?
Well,
or?
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the strategy is don't break, because you're not going to have a good chance of competing if you ever have to fix the car. B, you don't get to bring a truck or trailer, no support vehicle, so that's a very expensive U-Haul trip home. So reliability is huge, but at the same time, when you're there, when you're competing, you got to kind of roll the dice a little bit, decide how much power you want to go out there and gamble with. So for us, it'll be kind of assessing the track and how stressful the track is on the car and picking a power level for each track. I will definitely be tuning the car to each track, and I'll have some adjustability with the Motec to, if I'm got a couple laps in and the car's getting kind of hot, I'll be able to hit a button and kind of pull the power back to conserve it for the
Nice.
last lap. So
Yeah.
And as a driver, you've got to manage tires, brakes, and power anyway. So that's just kind of part of the game. So there's definitely a balance between
No, that sounds fun.
conservative and trying to send it to get a good lap time.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a exhausting, but also pretty amazing experience.
And all different makes of cars.
All kinds of stuff.
Everything?
Yeah. So we'll be in the mid-price sedan class. I forget what the upper cap of the value of the car is. Something like $50,000 maybe. So you'll see a lot of Evos, a lot of Subarus in that class. There's a GT class for the muscle car guys. There's 3.5 liter and up, I think, are roped into that class. So like a GTR would be in that class. So you don't in your class, you don't got to go head to head with those guys.
Right.
But so I'll be competing with other Subarus, other Evos, things of that nature. That'll be very competitive.
Very cool. I guess so. I assume that there's other guys that from Time Attack that have done that, I guess, too. So kind of
Yes.
Is
So
that kind of how you found out about it?
Yep.
or?
As we've been doing Grid Life over the last few years, we've kind of grown to have a Grid Life family or Time Attack family. You get to know these guys really well, and a lot of them have done one lap before. I have a lot of car friends that have done one lap. I've actually got a number of them that are doing it this year, so that's kind of exciting. I'm going to have, that I know of so far, at least 4 or 5 other people that are going to be doing it.
Oh, okay. When are you doing it?
So it's the first week of May.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember the exact date.
So it's like
now.
early spring event, kind of.
Yep, exactly.
Very cool.
So we got time.
Yeah. Awesome. That sounds like a lot of fun, actually.
Yeah.
And what do you have to do to prepare a car as it sits now? Obviously the engine, because
Yep.
he doesn't have an engine.
So we've been, for anybody that follows what 6 Star Motorsports, that's in our Chicago shop that I tune for, and and Dewey with his car called the Boogeyman. It's a Subaru GC8, highly modified, literally built to the edge of the rule book for street modified. And it was a car we threw together this year, and we kind of dominated with it. But the biggest thing that we wanted to try out this year was, instead of using the common EJ25 as a building block, we decided to do an EJ20. And part of that was just because we've seen so much success with the EJ20s and other applications where they weren't expected to be as good. Tim Herr with the spool bus, that yellow wagon that goes 9s on a motor that is legitimately 4 seasons old and has just seen so much abuse. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make sense that it's doesn't need to put head gaskets in so often, doesn't break. And so seeing how much that motor could take and kind of realizing that, the rod ratio and the cylinder size and everything's a lot better on a 2-liter, the heads are a lot better. It's like, hey, why don't we build a 2-liter and see if we can be competitive and have it hold together? So
we've talked about on the podcast before how when Subaru ran Dakar, they ran it with a 207.
There's no
right?
2.5 in Japan.
Yeah.
And most, look at Roger Clark. They run 2 liters. Look at any other Subaru that we look up to out there in the motorsports world, and they're not running 2.5s. It can be done. It's a lot more challenging. So where I'm going with this is that we've been developing that engine and working that engine all year long, and we're going to be putting one of those into our car as well, along with the Motec, to get that going. So to answer Misha's question, we got to get that, bottom end. That's going to come from Out Front Motorsports. You guys are actually going to be building some really kick-ass heads for me. I'm super excited about. Dominic Asia, get a Dom tune. He's putting together some custom Kelford cams that I'm really excited about. So I've got money down on those, waiting for those to get made. That's kind of what's holding me up and having you guys get the heads going. Throw that back together, get it in the car, get it tuned in, get the Motec all dialed in, all the safeties, all the extra sensors set up, and maybe some aero modifications to the car would help it out a little bit. We want to do some change to the cooling system to help with the airflow out of the car, and then put some big meaty tires on it because I can go quite a bit bigger with tires with one lap. There's no restriction on width like there is with
I gotcha.
time attack.
Yeah.
Dang, okay.
So whatever I can fit under there, and then choose a good tire. Michelin Pilot Super Sports, I think, are one of the popular tires because, we could put a slick tire on there, like an RE71R we run for time attack, but those usually don't last more than a couple track days when we're really pushing it.
So say you take that out and go 3500 miles with it. I don't know that you're going to go.
That would be that would not be advisable.
He needs those Michelin slicks.
Also,
slicks.
always a good chance of seeing some rain. So having something that has a good rain channel to it, those do not. So Michelin Pilot Super Sports are probably what we'll end up putting on the carb, something like that. So
especially in May, I mean, I can definitely see how you got to be at least somewhat prepared for the fact that it could rain. You're going all over the country.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of different environments there.
Yep.
So are you said you mentioned working on the aero. Are you involved in the aero process on the other cars, or are you going to kind of have to figure that out, or where are you at on that?
That's something that, we're probably going to, there's a lot of good aero companies out there, and to try to become one and figure it out doesn't make sense for us. So we'll probably defer to somebody, in the industry. We got a lot of people that we've gained their attention this year with our cars that want to work with us and will help us out to help develop their products better. So we'll find somebody to work with.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of the composite companies that have come into existence in the past 4 or 5 years. Those guys, they've got some really smart guys that have figured out a lot of really functional stuff that doesn't cost you as much.
And they've got the tools to know what's going to work.
Yeah, no, I think the aero world has come a long way.
Oh, it's
recently.
It's crazy.
I think part of it's just the access to the composites. You got. It doesn't require the same things that it required 20 years ago.
Nope.
You can make a lot of these composites in a different process than we used to be able to. So that'll be cool. No, that for sure. I'll have to keep up on that one. That sounds like a fun time.
You guys are sponsoring the car.
All right.
With those fancy
Well, there you go.
Well, I guess we have to keep up with it.
You guys are part
I'm
of it.
just curious how you're going to last. I mean, that many people in a car traveling and racing for that long.
What do you mean?
How many people are you taking with you?
Well, just my wife and I.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you're not going
Just
to. That's it. Just the
Crew
two.
and everything? No,
No?
because it takes up space in the car. There's a lot of different ways to handle this. Some guys will put a hitch on the car and you can pull a trailer, I believe. I don't know the specifics of that. But
That's very drag week. So you see 6-second cars pulling a trailer behind them going down the highway.
Theoretically, you could put some people in your back seat. Now I've got roll bars back there, and I've got no back seat, and that's not even necessarily safe.
Right.
So I don't know. Again, to be honest with you, we've only really skimmed the surface as to knowing what one lap.
Still getting there.
You know how you can do it, how you can attack it. My wife and I have a lot of research to do to really understand like what's the best way to attack this. But kind of in the initial planning, it's just going to be her and I, passenger, co-passenger, and she's going to, again, do the transiting. So when I finish racing, she'll take over and drive us. She's really good at that. She would pull us, pull the truck and trailer home all the time from races when I was just dead. So
we're kind of going through the same thing. A group of us here are trying to get a champ car together.
That's what he was telling me, yeah.
And it's like we're kind of going through the same thing of just like, we don't know enough about it to really know, okay, like we're looking at the base numbers and the base rules and saying like, oh, okay, it's like we do this, we'll be competitive, right? But then like we found a couple of Facebook groups that are guys who actually race, and we were kind of like reading through the comments and we're like, oh, yeah, we will not be competitive if that's all we do, and you kind of like start figuring out like, okay, like, so there's the rules and then there's like the interpretation of the rules and then there's what gets by anyways.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, we're even earlier stages where we have yet to start building the car. So, I mean,
yeah,
we're further off from you.
You just have to pick a car, right?
Yeah, right. Well, we were waiting for the new VPI, the Vehicle Performance Index numbers to come out, and then they did, and then it didn't really make the decision any easier because the number that they gave the Subaru that we were considering was low enough that we were like, oh, all right, well, maybe we do need to do that. Like, because we were kind of didn't know where we were going to end up because we had to ask them, hey, can you give us a number on this car? Because it wasn't on their list already, so. Yeah. Doing a lot of talking there, Tom. How you feeling?
Well, yeah.
Sorry,
his throat hurts because we just came from a Thai restaurant and something, I don't know.
I don't know what happened, but
did he wander into the back or something?
Yeah.
We didn't see him for a while.
Yeah,
I knew
that's
that was
true.
coming. I ate some spicy food and now I can't talk.
Oh, the Spice Lord can't handle the spicy food?
No, it's
Oh,
Yeah,
I feel
no,
so
it's-
bad for
It
you.
wasn't that spicy. I tried it.
it really wasn't. It really wasn't.
It's
It was
just
disappointing.
it's that or the plum sake with the spice.
Something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which was very
disappointing.
dangerous. I mean, it's putting me a little bit to sleep, but I kind of want more.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, Graham and I are having a conversation, and you guys are here. So
Well,
I'm soaking it up.
I wanted to chime in.
No, it's just because I heard all this from Graham a little while ago, so I'm
So
letting
with
him
it-
talk.
So with the Champ Car point system, yeah, it was kind of interesting to look at and see
Oh, now he's talking.
what all. Yeah.
just got to call him out first.
So it was interesting to see what all was that goes into like the classification and what they actually merit as being worth giving more points, because like that's how it works. It's kind of like you have a certain amount of points and then you're in this class, and some of the items were kind of weird because we were looking at like what does it take to put a turbo on a car, and it's like, okay, you jump a class, but if you're in a certain displacement, it's totally worth it.
Right.
If you're on the lower end, because then you can be in the just the next tier and not like 2 tiers over.
Well, and like we were looking at the fuel tank size is like a big deal for them.
Yeah.
And that was
Apparently
kind of
Heim joints too. They don't like Heim joints.
yeah, like the things that cost you points are stuff that you wouldn't necessarily like. Whole front, tubular front end, totally fine. Each Heim joint, 5 points apiece.
That's weird.
Yeah,
but like
very.
you get 500 points, but everything over 500 is 10 points is a lap, like a lap penalty because it's endurance racing. So
Okay.
So, it's like we were looking at like, okay, like it'd be cool to do that, but like no one makes this that doesn't have that. And then now we're over the points. So then we kind of started going backwards, like, okay, we need to use simpler stuff that's, going to keep us under the points.
So it's very strategic just from a point standpoint. So we obviously want to be competitive. So it definitely want to put some thought into what we're actually going to use, and because we can honestly go get a BRZ and just take the 500 point hit and probably do pretty well.
To give you some context, like Porsche Boxster is like 525 points, right? So right underneath that is a Subaru BRZ, which is 500 points, and then like the newer Miatas are 500 points. But then you drop down and it's like, oh, you have a Fox body that's 300 points. Like, you can go fast with a Fox body.
You get to subtract some points because Tom's never raced a car.
Well, ideally, I would have some experience before we actually jump into the situation. But yeah,
we're
I'm a
going to
total
buy him
noob,
an
so-
electric go-kart.
Now, have you raced before?
So I grew up racing junior dragsters, so drag racing. And then I've done some motorcycle stuff and very, very little actual road course racing.
Okay, so you know you do have to turn the wheel.
Yeah.
Okay. Making sure.
Oh man, I wish she was here the other podcast when we talk. All right. The wheel needs to be turned. Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've only rolled like
That's
two
cool.
two dragsters.
Okay.
You're still here.
Just two, yeah.
But you
No, I
know,
think that's
the
cool.
tricky part was
So you are
when
familiar
it-
with turning.
Yeah, it was when I was turning though.
I was asking Tom earlier. Maybe you know what group is this with? Is there like a sanctioning body that
So
governs?
I was
So I
actually
don't-
looking that
I
up.
don't.
I don't really
like
think
NASA. You know.
I don't think it's part of SCCA or NASA. I think they're kind of they run this own thing because now SCCA has their own endurance series and
Okay.
NASA does.
So where are they based out of?
Honestly, I've
No
never
idea.
looked to see where, but the guys who run it or are kind of like in charge of it, also two of them also race in the series. So I don't think it's like I think this is more along the lines of like an amateur endurance
Kind of
thing
more
than it is like
grassroots
yeah.
maybe type stuff. How'd you guys find it, and why did you settle on this one?
Well, when at the last shop that I worked at, one of our customers, they do WRL, Champ Car, and then they've done like Lemons before.
Okay.
And so I was talking to them about doing it, and I said, oh, like I kind of want to do this, and then I couldn't put it together with the guys that I was trying to put it together with the first time, and so then after I started ZL Motorworks here, and we got to talking one night, and I brought it up, and they were like, oh yeah, I would do that. And for me,
You can drive. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, he's down.
I know how to turn.
He says he's down. We'll
you
see.
know how to turn on pavement?
Well, we'll find that out. won't we?
We'll find that out.
You're a rally guy. You can't just.
We'll find out.
You can't just
Sensual.
give her the old Scandinavian flick.
We'll
and
find
all
We'll
it
that.
out.
see. It sure will. If it's wet, it'll be fine.
There's this thing called braking and turning in.
It's a Subaru. It breaks itself.
Apexing, you know. Okay, just making sure you're aware.
Got to turn hard enough, no brakes.
So you got 3 people. Who else is going to drive?
Ben.
So actually, kind of how we have it set up right now is we have a date coming in the future, and we have enough people interested that we basically just said, okay, on this date, you either show up with money or you're not doing it.
Okay.
Because one of the things that I ran into the last time is like we all wanted to do it, and then people's lives got in the way, and they like couldn't, and then we ended up with a Miata that like we're not going to do anything with, you know. So
Well, I like cars. I know how to turn corners. So if you guys need somebody, let me know if it fits within the schedule and the time, and
yeah, I mean,
I could be interested.
realistically, I think there's going to be a group of people who like are owners on the car, and then there's going to be a group of people who we reach out to when like we want to go to a race, but we can only get 3 of our guys to do it. You know?
Fill-in drivers.
Yeah,
Sure. Yeah.
and that's
I like-
what a lot of these teams do. That I've kind of realized after like looking at it a bunch is like, oh, there's like a lot of guys who show up with 2 or 3 cars and they just rent out seats
Sure.
in their cars.
Yeah,
you know?
that sounds cool. I like it.
2-hour stints. You know, I think that'll be a hard one to get used to.
That's something that I like time attack because it's so focused. You go out there, you warm the car up, you drive, at your limits and the car's limits for a lap, cool down, maybe do one more, and then you come in. The only type of endurance racing I've done, funny enough, would be like in Forza. I've ran with some Forza leagues that
Yeah.
do pretty long races, 45 minutes, maybe an hour. And that feels like a really long time just to turn laps, but it's a good skill set. I think it's something that I've always kind of wanted to try at some point.
I brought up I have a sim at my house, and I brought up when we first started talking about it, I was like, yeah, I mean, I think everybody, at least before we go ever do this, like you should come do 2 hours. Like come
Yeah.
over to the house and do 2 hours because like I don't think you realize how tired you're going to be
It
after 2
requires
hours.
so much mental focus.
Yeah.
You think you can drive a car, on a highway trip for 2 hours. It's one thing, but your mind can go somewhere else.
Yeah.
You can just kind of zone out and follow the road. But when you're having to hit brake zones, I mean, you lose focus for a moment. You're off the track.
I think I consume a lot of YouTube, and some of my favorite guys who I used to watch do the racing sims, they do like endurance in karting now. They do like these endurance events in like karting in Europe.
Yep.
And they'll do 24 hours in just a cart, and then they're getting out every 2 hours. And I'm like, man, that I guarantee you is more fatiguing than the real car.
Oh yeah.
Because like
Easily.
there's no way, the whole thing just throws you everywhere. You're in a seat this tall, like,
Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah. But they have a lot of fun with it. And it's the same kind of, I think that was part of probably why I started getting interested in the endurance racing is I saw these guys that I've watched for years on YouTube and like Twitch or whatever, and then I started seeing them do it, and I was like, man, that looks really fun. And they like always, they were like, even if you're like soaked and wet and it's in the rain, he's like, at the end of your 2 hours, you want to get out because you're tired, but you don't want to stop. And that's kind of I was like, oh man, like that sounds awesome. Like I want to do that, and that's kind of how but like, I'm not gonna go race karts. That's not a thing that I should be doing.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of why I started leaning towards the amateur endurance car racing, full-size cars.
Nice.
And I don't know. I think I got enough of these guys talked into it. We'll see.
See who shows up.
Yeah, right?
Well, you've talked to enough of us, so somebody will.
Yeah. I figure if I bother you enough about it, you'll just eventually
true.
give me money so I shut up.
That is a good tactic. Yeah. So I'm reading that it's Tire Rack puts it on. Is that what it is?
They're the
they
major sponsor.
They sponsor it,
But
but
sponsored, but they don't put it on.
So I got to pull it up here. So apparently, Chump Car was first.
Yeah.
And Chump Car International Inc. is what they LLC'd as. So it's the parent company, and they're basically have like the Champ Car Endurance Series is underneath Chump Car, just Champ Car itself, CCES, and ChampCast.live, whatever that is.
So Champ Car used to be Champ Car. From what I understand, Champ Car and Lemons were kind of the same thing. The 24 Hours of Lemons, and then there started to be these guys in the 24 Hours of Lemons who wanted to go a bit faster, have a bit more rules.
Not drive lemons.
Yeah, and those guys kind of split off and started
Can't blame
doing like the Champ or the Chump Car is what they called it. And then when IndyCar gave up the trademark for Champ Car, they were like, okay, cool, Champ Car.
Okay.
Because apparently that was how they got like that. It used to be IndyCar, I guess, had a series called Champ Car, and then when they eventually gave up on the name, these guys who were running Chump Car were like, oh, that sounds cooler. Made it a little more. Chump Car has kind of a connotation to it, I guess.
That makes
Yeah.
more sense. Then I understand the history better at
I guess
that.
that was 2009.
Oh wow, I didn't even realize they'd been doing it for that long. But yeah, the guy that I know, hi Chuck, he watches the podcast. They have a BMW that they run in WRL, and I've known him for a while. He also runs a 90s golf in SCCA and stuff, and he's real fast. And he, after I kind of started talking to him about the road course racing when he came into the shop all the time, that's really what got me into it. Like I said, I grew up drag racing, and so I had never really even thought like, oh, I can totally go amateur road racing. And then, I guess 4 years ago or so, we started talking about it, and at some point, it'll happen.
All right.
Well, Ben, you probably know this. When we crashed the Mazda, the rally car, they used it for Chump Car a few years ago.
Yeah.
When was that,
Oh,
Kevin?
I didn't know that.
4 or 5 years ago? 4 or 5 years ago? Yeah, the cage was bent, but it was good enough for Chump Car. Put a plexiglass windshield, I think, in it. And it was already a Mazda MX-3 rally car. And it lasted only the first driver. Yeah, it blew up.
Like a few laps, right? Not even.
Yeah, well, we won't say who it was that was driving, but if they're listening, they know who it was. Misshifted, and that was it. It was a pretty powerful engine.
Only
So
takes one.
Bummer.
Get a 75-point deduction if you put an automatic in the car. So I mean, we could just do that.
deduction.
Really?
Yeah. So like,
Why'd you want an automatic?
but that's why it's a 75-point deduction.
Don't do that.
But yeah, but there are guys who are now running. They're running like DCT cars.
Oh, because you can't money shift it. That's why you'd want that.
Because you can't money shift it.
You can't
Yeah,
money
like-
shift an auto,
Yeah.
right?
Like
I
4-1.
Can't do it. I mean, it won't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The selector doesn't actually physically move the gear. So the ECU, the TCU will say, "Yeah, no, you're not going to go into one right now."
Well, here's what you do then. You have a switchboard with all the little solenoids.
Yeah, lightning board. The lightning boards.
That's a lot of work for
that's
just
what
putting a manual in a car.
They ran those in Top Fuel back in the day.
Did
had
they?
a board for controlling the shifting. Now they're just a single clutch back, and there is no transmission. But
Right. Well, that's for drag racing.
Yeah, Top Fuel cars.
Yeah.
Is it the
You're gonna
magnesium?
pretend like you don't know what a top fuel car is.
Yeah, like 93 octane.
Yeah.
That's the top fuel that I get.
Yeah, premium.
Premium. You can get that at your
12,000
local
horsepower
Shell.
on premium. How's that going to work out?
Great. Can you get 12,000 horsepower on premium, Graham?
12,000?
Yeah.
No.
No.
What if you tried real hard, Graham?
No. Just no.
All right.
I mean, if you stack together enough engines,
Okay, that's what I'm getting at.
How much?
Yeah.
if you get 12,000 horsepower engines and bolt them all together,
All right.
What about with nitrous?
no.
All right. So
They're using
next time you're
methanol.
here, Graham, we're going to
Spray
have
the whole house down.
Just spray it
12,000
down.
horsepower engines, and you
Okay.
get 12,000 horsepower on 93.
Okay, that we can do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So challenge accepted,
What,
Yes.
What car are you putting
Graham?
it in?
No.
Graham. Challenge.
What
You're gonna
cars?
bolt the
It'd have
engines
to be
together?
3 cars.
Yeah.
No.
I'll worry about the bolting. You worry about the
You
tuning.
have enough things to worry about.
Okay, you're right.
Okay. All right.
Dang.
Let's get this train back on the tracks.
All right. Sorry. Yeah. This is how it rolls.
No, yeah, I was gonna say this is the
Oh,
train.
this. Okay.
This is the train.
The tracks just skip
Yeah.
split
Yeah.
apart.
No, we just do whatever we want.
Well, it's all cabooses.
I noticed you guys like some people, if you organize it, have like this little bullet list and be like, okay,
We
here's
tried
some
that.
points to cover. You know, and when we start getting too far down a certain path, you'd be like, okay, let's switch over to this. No, you guys just wing it. Whatever.
So, if I'm honest, my favorite type of podcasts are the ones that just kind of are like
totally random.
they just have a guest on and they just talk about whatever,
Okay.
and they like do whatever, and then
We tried that with Zach. Wrote down some notes, and then his one scribble, and it was
Oh,
about some kind of Camaro. And we're
okay.
like, what was it again? I don't
The
remember.
Z, what was it? The
Okay.
something
don't
with
know.
Z. It
no, I
looked
think
like
we were
an
just.
S.
I'm pretty sure we were just talking about the C8.
No, it was you
No,
had
it
a
was something
Z28 written down.
No, but it was something
Why would I-
else, and we thought it was something like
now we're spending
Subaru.
more time.
Oh,
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
no,
Now.
no, no.
All right,
So now
It
we're
was
off the
the Z-
tracks
it
again.
was- yeah.
But there are no tracks.
you're right. There's no tracks, just
It's
cabooses.
like bumper cars. You're just floating
just
around.
yeah, exactly.
Bumper cars, I like that. Yeah.
Floating around. Okay.
We just play dodgeball with topics. We're just gonna
Yeah.
throw them at you, and you just if you don't want to talk about it, just dodge
Okay,
that.
so hit me with a new topic, Misha.
All right, so
What do you got?
here's another topic. This is something that for people that don't necessarily know. Wow, the headphone comes in and out. It's just like anyway.
Yeah, we're figuring it out.
Yeah, yeah,
That's probably just your hearing.
yeah.
You're getting old.
Probably is. For those, all right, we're done. No,
Yeah.
for those of us who, for those people that don't know, what does a tuner do? What's the importance of tuning? Why should you get your car tuned? Can't you just put a downpipe and all this stuff on your car and just buy the access port and just run whatever map is on there?
So,
Can you stop whacking your mic?
I'm
please?
sorry.
so that's
Oh,
a-
my mic. I'm sorry. Yeah, yeah.
So that's a pretty heavy question, but I'm pretty good at answering this generally. So the importance of tuning it depends a lot on the platform. Okay, so
Let's just take like a Subaru.
well, and that's what I'm gonna
Yeah.
explain. So Subaru is definitely a unique example, but tuning is very important because it's very important that an engine runs the way it's meant to be running. It's at appropriate air fuel ratios, appropriate timing curve for the fuel type, appropriate boost levels, and so on. The biggest challenge with the EJ Subarus, EJ motor Subarus is, and a lot of other types of cars, is that there's no fuel control when you're full throttle. That's kind of what it boils down to. So if the fueling is not dialed in correctly for your modifications, and if you're not running the correct amount of boost, the right amount of timing, and things get wacky, ECU doesn't have as much intervention as it does on, like, say, a Volkswagen, for example. You can get away with a lot more in a Volkswagen because it's always in control of the fueling. You give it an appropriate target, it'll hit it. If it can't for some reason, it'll tend to let you know. Subarus, no, they'll run themselves clean until they explode. So tuning becomes valuable, one, to make sure that the ECU is calibrated correctly for the car and the mods and everything else. But a lot of it's also just kind of a checkup. It's kind of a process of me going through and saying, is this car making the power it should? Is it reaching the my air fuel ratio targets without having to do weird things that might indicate that there's a boost leak or a MAF leak or something funny going on with the injectors? So it's kind of tuning is kind of a sanity check to make sure that the engine's running really well, and of course put a good calibration on it to match your modifications.
Right. And why is it important to have like a live tuner versus like a can tune or something you can get from the internet or
Sure. So that's
something like that?
Yeah, so the off the shelf tunes, they're kind of a one size fits all, and they're they try to be as safe as possible. And if your modifications match and everything's running tip top shape and your fuel quality is good, a lot of times they will run pretty well. And there is enough ECU control to kind of handle some variance. But not every car responds exactly the same.
Right.
If a car has, a bit of a MAF leak, a bit of a boost leak, or your localized fuel's not so great, or, for whatever reason, your turbo makes a bit more boost, things like that. Off the shelf maps won't always work so well. So, when I tune a car, I start with a map that's close for the modifications, but then it gets individually customized for exactly what that car needs to be on target and healthy.
That's a great explanation, actually. I did not know that.
What I always tell people is is that it's just science, right? Like, it's not. You get a lot of these guys in our industry, I think, is pretty bad about it. These guys who try to convince everyone that they know some black magic that no one else knows, and I just don't buy into that at all. Right?
No, yeah.
It's just science. Everything is just numbers, and it has to work.
Right. There's math, there's science, there's chemistry involved.
Yeah.
There's physics, a lot of physics involved. I think the thing that separates good tuners from mediocre tuners is having really intimate working knowledge of what's going on inside the engine, like understanding what cylinder pressure is and when it forms, and how it's necessary to move the piston, but it's really easy to create more than you need, with inappropriate timing curves and fuel curves.
I mean, it's exactly right. When I go to things like PRI, you just keep looking at every year. There's more and more data collection software and data collection devices that give us a better look at what's actively happening inside the engine.
Oh yeah, I mean
and I think that's that's just proof right there of exactly what you just said is it's all stuff that you have to be able to look at, and if you have a better knowledge of it, you can do a better job, and if you if the more stuff that we can measure, the better off we're going to be. Usually.
Absolutely. Yeah, going back to the Motec in our car, when kind of nerded out with it, being a computer science guy, I've kind of nerded out with it to the point where it has 4 individual AFRs per cylinder with back pressure compensation through the AEM box, 4 EGTs, coolant pressure sensor, all the normal sensors, fuel pressure, everything.
Yeah.
So like you were saying, data, the more data you have, and if you can know what each cylinder's doing, that's extremely valuable.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that we, in the, before even really EFI, when the drag racing guys were all on the mechanical fuel injection, they're doing the same thing with EGT sensors on a mechanical fuel injection.
Yep.
They were doing the same thing, but they didn't have the ability to collect the data that we can collect now. So when you look at the new stuff, the running the Holley Terminators, right? And they can put 8 EGTs and monitor them, and 8 O2 sensors and monitor them in a simple bolt-in box. That's not a complicated aftermarket ECU. In terms of when you look at, they basically sell you a harness that already has all that in there, right?
Yeah.
You don't even have to build any of that out. It's just you want 8 of everything? Okay, here you go.
Just plug it in.
Right. And I think that's when you look at stuff like that, it's that's because that's what these guys who build the stuff think that you should be doing. Otherwise they wouldn't make it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's probably a little more difficult on stuff like the Motec, because I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming they don't have the same range of plug and play ECU or plug and play wiring harnesses like some of the guys like Holley do and that kind of stuff. I'm not super familiar, but
there's a lot of third parties actually. You guys work with Boomslang a lot.
Yeah.
The harness that I got.
I wire too.
Yeah. So I ordered my Motec through John Reed Racing, and he puts together a firmware package that's targeted to the crank signal, and has some extra little things in there that he finds valuable to kind of the Motec firmware, and I did as well. I really liked his firmware package. He also worked with Boomslang to build out a wiring schematic, and has Boomslang build the harnesses.
Right.
So for my car, it was literally plug and play.
That's awesome.
I have some empty leads that I hook up to whatever I want, my EGTs, my AFRs.
Right.
I actually did the AFR over CAN bus. That's another thing. Is
okay.
CAN bus.
Yeah, very cool.
It's very popular to add things via CAN bus now. That's just 2 wires, and you have data over 2 wires. It's
Right.
incredible.
God, that's so nice.
Not having it one wire to each thing.
Yeah, I think.
You guys, but I hate wiring so much.
CAN bus is your friend. It's just complicated because it's a whole other language to understand.
Yeah, I think CAN bus really changed a lot about how the guys at the pro level are building race cars.
Yep.
I think that was one of the more fun things to watch. Obviously, your every car after 2011 or whatever it was has CAN bus, but then you got to see what the guys in the racing world were doing with it, and you're like, oh yeah, okay,
Yes.
I dig that. You guys are doing all the things with this. It's awesome.
It's crazy.
A whole nother level of just stuff that we can play with. And as a guy who likes to play with all the race car stuff, that's what I'm about.
Yeah. That's where it's at.
Yeah, it's great. Stuff that's in a regular car that has can failures. And, yeah, it's great.
They're a nightmare to, yeah.
Yeah.
Troubleshooting CAN busts.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah. No thanks.
Yeah. Oh, mouse got in this little hole and chewed this one wire. Yeah.
Oops.
Awesome. Yeah, but no, I see the benefit, obviously.
Somebody took this interior apart and then bolted it back together
Yeah.
5 years ago, and now it finally rubbed through.
And screws everywhere. Looking at you.
So what else you got for me? Mason?
What are you thinking, guys? Scoot?
Well, just to go back a little bit on some on
His voice is so deep in these.
I know it's
headphones.
God, I sound ridiculous. I'm just
More
gonna
than usual.
See you guys. So just to go back a little bit on the importance of tuning, like you touched base on a little bit on like some of the like variables that we see with like pretty much the same build, like car to car, same builds. The variance is so significant sometimes, and it just kind of blows my mind because like when we're dynoing two of the same cars pretty much with 207s, like we've got one that's basically got everything the other one has, and they're just totally different in terms of the power output. So I don't know where I was going with this.
Is there a question?
I don't know.
I think I understand what you're saying.
I think the answer is 7.
But you're right. Kind of going back to what I was saying with the Subarus. If one of them, you got identical cars, but
Answer is 7.
one might try to run a little bit too lean.
Is there a question in there? Graham? No, sorry. Go ahead. You're good.
Trying to get serious. Trying to get.
I'm sorry. I'm
Some
sorry.
of these bumper cars kind of lined up, maybe.
Yeah, right.
Look like something here. No, what he was saying was, like I said, two identical cars, same setup. You flash the same starting map. One might run a good amount leaner than the other. And as you know, with Subaru engines, there's no room to be too lean. And like we talked about earlier,
Lean is not mean.
there's no closed loop fueling to take over and hit those targets. So that's why, again, each car needs its own calibration.
Yeah, I just thought, just based on what we've seen empirically, like at the dyno, like
Yeah.
that still blows my mind because car to car, they could be exactly the same, but they just respond differently.
Yeah,
So,
and then the trick isn't always like necessarily like how to tune the one to match the other. It's why isn't that one? Looking at the data and trying to understand why is this not making the power it should be. Like
Yeah.
what differences maybe are we not seeing?
I can tell you that a lot of times, maybe not so much on the turbo cars because it adds a whole nother level of things that can be different in just like the piping. But like in big horsepower, naturally aspirated stuff, right? A lot of those differences are just physical differences in the engine. Like on stuff that is the exact same, like the same list of parts, the physical differences inside the engine can be enough to make that change.
you talking
know?
about like the tolerances?
No, I mean like, okay, so you have two of the exact same cylinder heads from, let's just say, Edelbrock, right? What do you think the likelihood is that they're going to have the exact same valve height off the deck?
I mean, just coming out of the factory or like
Brand new.
just brand new?
It should be
I mean, I imagine that-
relatively close.
Yeah, I imagine they have tolerances for like high to low.
Right, but like their tolerance, let's just say their tolerance is 5 thousandths, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like on something that's floating a big valve and has a CNC port, putting that valve 10 thousandths further out into the chamber can have a huge effect on how much air it flows. Like you really don't see that stuff until you start like that kind of stuff, especially in a horsepower world. Like the guys who are really flow benching stuff and really chasing every little horsepower, like they're not only worried about port shape and size and design, they're also worried about like where the valve physically is in relation to that port, right? And that's like you have this huge seat, so guys think, oh, you have this huge seat, so it can be anywhere on there. But that like where it's at on that seat will make a huge difference. And like I said, it probably doesn't matter so much on the like the internal engine differences probably don't matter so much on the boosted cars, but on the high horsepower NA stuff, it makes a huge difference for sure. I mean, we've seen a head swap on, like your average bracket racing big block Chevy, go back to the dyno a couple, few weeks after a horrific accident and make 30 horsepower more. And you're just like,
Where'd that come
Why?
from?
right.
Yeah, what
And like
changed?
that specific motor, the reason it hurt itself is it was a mechanical fuel injection that ran out of alcohol halfway through a pull. It was all over. It melted all
I
the
hate
things.
when I run out of alcohol halfway through a pole.
You know.
Yeah, it's happened a lot.
So I mean, you know, for that one, it was nothing physically happened inside the engine to cause the failure. It was entirely related to the fact that it went super lean, super fast. Everything was over. It was already at 6,000 RPM, and it's 700 cubic inches. You're not slowing that down fast enough to keep it from
So
hurting
you
itself.
said it could be like you as an example. You said 30 horsepower difference. What kind of numbers are we talking about?
Those were 1,000 horsepower motors.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
see now we're thinking 30 horsepower. That's a lot.
That's a
We're-
lot.
Right.
Yeah.
We're used to dealing with cars that make between
Yeah.
3 and 5.
Yeah.
30
30
horse,
is just like, meh.
that's
Well, I think part of that is too is kind of what I was saying. Like when you're talking about those type of motors, those guys are the ones who are chasing half a percentage point.
right.
Right.
So in that
And
case,
so-
3%. Using your example,
Right.
yeah, that wouldn't be a lot for us, but
For those guys, it makes
but
a
that's
huge
what he's
difference.
saying, the valve, how it, where it protrudes. in
Yeah.
the cylinder.
Well, he's also saying NA, where the boost, is such a major factor. And
True, we're forcing the air in.
yeah, so it's just like, as long as
Drawing
it
it
gets in there, the volume we think it's going to get in there, then chances are it's going to do okay.
Sure.
But there is some power to be had with that same technology towards even boosted engines. You still want them to be as efficient as possible.
Cylinder head consistency too between heads is a big thing.
Yeah.
We see in all of the stuff that we see, and I've worked with most of the aftermarket manufacturers' cylinder heads for a lot of like the big V8 domestic guys. I've seen them all right out of the box, perfect, brand new right out of the box, and it'll say like ready to run on the box. This was this thing that one of the companies did for a long time, and we used to just laugh because I'd be like, "Oh yeah, ready to run," and then you'd put it on the surfacer, and it's just like, "Oh okay, yeah, ready to run." Like there's a 4,000s crank in that, whatever. All right, yeah, that's fine, ready to run, perfect. Don't worry, it's only a max wedge making 1,000. That 4,000s dip isn't going to mean anything.
I mean, it didn't say how long it was going to run for,
Right.
which is relative,
Yeah.
it's ready to run.
Yeah,
For a while.
Yeah. It's a great motor.
yeah, great motors. Well,
Well,
that's all I got. I
Yeah.
thought it was fun. I appreciate all the info and
Yeah.
your insights into what you got
you're
going
actually,
on.
you're our first actual official guest.
Oh boy.
I know.
I'm honored.
So
I can't believe it was Dookie Howser too for our first guest.
Hey,
Oh my God.
he said
We're so
nothing.
we're
He
so
said
honored.
nothing the entire podcast,
Yeah, he
and then
waits
he
till
comes
the
out
end.
here at the end.
Sorry, I've been waiting the entire time. No, I'm
Yeah.
just kidding.
Jeez.
We love you, Graham.
So I mean, we appreciate you coming on. Plug whatever you want, man. Take some time and plug whatever you got going on and whatever you want to talk about. And
yeah, I'm tired, to be honest
All
with
right.
you. Like I was telling these guys, I was literally in Detroit yesterday, supporting Dewey's GC, watching that thing go around that speed ring. So that was pretty cool. But
nice.
I'm exhausted.
All right, man.
yeah.
it's a
no,
big
I don't
week
have
for
it.
you. Yeah, he's here, and then you're in Orlando.
Yeah, no, 2 days here, 2 days in Iowa, and then 2 days in Orlando, then
Yeah.
home finally.
Yeah.
To more cars. And
Sounds like a good week.
It's a long week, but it's good.
Actually, I think a good way we can close this out is I don't know, Graham, do you have any advice for anybody looking to get the cars tuned and how to prepare? Or do you have any advice for anybody that's looking to get their car tuned and first steps that they should potentially
Yes,
take before
first
they
step.
contact a tuner?
Call this guy. Talk to him. Don't just put stupid shit on your car. Don't try to do things yourself that are over your head. Call Misha. Talk to him. He'll guide you on the right parts and the right way to do things and do it correctly. That's the biggest thing we run into is that, if you guys put a car together, like Steve McCormick's car, you guys put that car together, and it took me, 4 or 5 runs, and we're making exactly the power we should be. Everything's behaving. We're not fighting it. But, when guys put their own cars together and come and show up, it never goes well. So my biggest advice is if you're not really confident, really experienced, and you want to have your car go well, work with an experienced shop. In this case around here, call Misha, let him help you, guide you on your path to success there.
We'll insert the phone number here somewhere.
So
We have a whole description.
that's my
on it.
recommendation. And also as a tuning company, my wife and I, we're always happy to help. We don't charge for our consulting. If you have questions, you want to know what we recommend, feel free to reach out to us directly and find out.
And we'll
help you.
include your information in the description. So
Cool.
Yeah, we'll put. I assume you have Facebook and websites and all that stuff.
Yep.
So we'll put all that in the description.
BoostPerformanceTuning.com is our website. Same for the Facebook page.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Cam. Thanks
Cool.
for joining us this week on the Fueled Podcast, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for
right
having me.
on.